I'm here to introduce our last presenter, and that is Dr. Alex Garcia. He is a globally experienced leader, international speaker, performance improvement coach, and trainer. He's worked with a diverse client base developed over 20 years, including the Department of Defense, Lockheed Martin, Kaiser Permanente, NOAA, NSA, Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, Sara Lee Foods, and of course, Social Security Administration, just to name a few. Dr. Garcia is also the founder and CEO of Leadership Dynamics, and that is a consulting firm specializing in leadership development. With a PhD in industrial, organizational, behavioral psychology from Wright State University, Dr. Garcia has applied his education, expertise, and experience to working with clients in the U.S., Canada, Europe, and Asia. He took his message to a broader audience when he released the audio series, The Mental Edge, which explores how self-esteem and self-image affect professional and personal effectiveness. Dr. Garcia is also an adjunct faculty. He's a busy man with the federal government Office of Personnel Management. Additionally, he's certified on a range of widely recognized programs and psychological assessments, including leadership coaching, 360-degree feedback, which I'm sure many of you have heard of, California Personality Inventory, or CPI, emotional intelligence, which we talked about this morning, the DISC behavioral styles assessments, and project management, just to name a few. He has coached, spoken to, taught leadership and management skills to leaders of business, government, and education, and has built a reputation for providing passionate, energized, and enthusiastic coaching, speaking, and training sessions for professionals in many industries and sectors. So please help me to welcome Dr. Garcia.
I had the privilege to work with this organization for the last 10, 12 years. It's been a while since I've been here, but I definitely appreciate you having me. Additionally, I want you to look at this program in terms of both the personal as well as the professional, because many of us like to compartmentalize our lives. We tell ourselves and others, I have a personal life and I have a professional life, as though they're two separate lives. They're not. This is one life, because we all know that what you do personally will affect in your professional life. Can we agree? And we all know what we do in our professional life will affect our personal life. So I want you to look at this in terms of this is my life, and both personal as well as professional, because we have to understand you don't get in life what you want. You get in life who you are. So this program is about you. When you're talking about embracing change and transition, this is about you. How can I adapt? How can I be more flexible? How can I adjust? And how can I achieve those goals that I and my organization want me to accomplish? In fact, one of the challenges that we face as adults is that we will go to workshops, seminars, and training sessions, and we will get a lot of good information. But what happens to many of us is that we get that information, we get excited, we get motivated, then we go out and we try to change too much, too fast. Because if you're not consistently, deliberately, and consciously thinking about, utilizing, or at least sharing some of the information that you're going to learn here today, what do you think is going to happen 3 to 4 weeks from today? What's going to happen? You're going to forget. In fact, studies suggest that you will lose anywhere between 85 to 95% of this information within that 3 to 4 week time period if you fail to utilize it, think about it, or share it. That is week one. For those of you who fail to think about or share this information, you might be utilizing anywhere between 7 to 40%. And that's just week one. By week two, for those of you who fail to think about, utilize, or share this information, you'll be down to as little as between 2 and 6%. And again, that's just week two. And by week 3 and 4, some of you won't even remember being here. So it's very important to consistently, deliberately, and consciously think about, utilize, as well as share this information. In fact, many of the ideas, principles, and skills that I'm going to be sharing with you today are the same ones that I have used as an executive director of a nonprofit social service agency, the same knowledge, skills, and techniques that I'm presently using as president and CEO of Leadership Dynamics, which is a management consulting firm that I'm currently heading. But I'm also a psychologist. So I want to put a lot of emphasis on achieving permanent, meaningful, and lasting changes, because that's exactly why we go to seminars, workshops, and training sessions. We want to get this information, program it in so it becomes automatic, effortless, and free-flowing, so it becomes a habit. Because until it becomes a habit, you have to consciously and deliberately think about everything you're doing. In fact, many of us, if not all of us, have been in that situation where we've driven home, wonder how we got there. Now, we need that part of our brain. However, it can become an adversary when you're trying to change or improve. It's like pulling yourself away from gravity. You're always being pulled back to that comfortable, familiar, pre-programmed position, even if you know that the new knowledge, the new ideas, those skills are better for you. As human beings, we prefer that which is familiar and that which is comfortable. So I'm going to share with you what I consider the two primary variables that you have to learn to deal with in order to achieve permanent improvements or permanent changes in any area of life, particularly if you're talking about learning to embrace change in times of transition. Variable number one, you must be able to deal with the discomfort that's associated with any change and or improvement. That is, you must be able to deal with the discomfort associated with any change and or improvement. Because whenever we try to improve on any existing behaviors, or modify some behaviors, or add new behaviors, and they become uncomfortable, and the tension begins to surface, which is all part of the process of change, what generally happens when you try to change or improve and you begin to experience that discomfort or experience that stress? What happens? We stop. So I'm going to share ways in which to minimize that discomfort so you can achieve some of the changes you like to achieve. Variable number two is that you must be able to generate that intrinsic motivation, that internal drive to get yourself to take new actions. Because as adults, we must recognize that there is a huge gap between intention and application. We all know we intend to do a lot of things. But can we then generate the internal motivation and drive to get ourselves to do what we know we need to do in order to achieve the results or at least the outcome that we like to achieve? And I'm going to show ways in which you can do that as well. So dealing with the discomfort as well as generating that intrinsic motivation, that internal drive to get yourself to take new actions are the two variables that I want you to consider as I share a lot of very valuable information with you today. In fact, today I'm going to ask everyone in here to commit to at least two things, possibly three. Hopefully you commit to a lot more, but personally, I'm going to ask everyone in here to commit to at least two things, and again, maybe three. Now, the very first thing I'm going to ask you to commit to, this is number one of the potential three, and that is to begin to cultivate or develop a more proactive mindset. To begin to cultivate or develop a more proactive mindset. And what I mean by begin to cultivate or develop a more proactive mindset is that you need to decide in advance through reflective thought how you want things to work out. That is, you need to decide in advance through reflective thought how you want things to work out. Because remember, the majority of us are habitually reactive. That is, depending on what someone says to us, depending on how someone treats us, or even depending on what happens to us, we then react to it, and many of us just hope things work out. In fact, being reactive is probably the single greatest contributor to stress, frustration, as well as creating those feelings of being out of control. Now, you're going to hear me talk a little bit about control today. And what I mean by control as it relates to this program in that it is synonymous with you accepting responsibility for causing the effects in your life and in your circumstance. That is, you accept responsibility for causing the effects in your life and in your circumstances. Because most of us have a tendency to blame every situation, circumstance, or person for what happens to us. That is, you are stressing me out. Not really. Or you are driving me crazy. In reality, who's stressing you out or driving you crazy? Yourself. Some of you didn't want to say that. Yourself, by virtue of how you have chosen, and again, chosen to interpret that situation. So it's very important that we begin to cultivate those feelings that I am in control. In fact, the degree of control that you feel you have over your life and over your circumstances is in direct proportion, and I repeat, direct proportion to how happy you are, how productive and effective you are, and how well you did with circumstances and or situations that you did not or could not plan for. So it's very important that we begin to cultivate those feelings that I am in control. And we do that by being less reactive and more what? More what? Proactive. More proactive. That is, I'm going to decide in advance through reflective thought how I want things to work out. In fact, a bit of ancient wisdom says that if you do what you've always done, you'll get what you've always gotten. That simply means if you're serious about learning to embrace change in a time of transition or in change in general, then you have to make some changes. And by making changes, you can then direct yourself toward the goals and objectives that are not just important to you, but to your organizations, to your teams, and even your friends and family. So the first thing when we talk about embracing change in a time of transition is to identify what is change. What is change? And I define change as a shift. It is a shift of or an ongoing process of letting go of what was in favor of embracing what can be. That is, letting go of what was in favor of what can be. That's very difficult for a lot of people. In fact, some studies suggest that what we call the 20-50-30 rule of change. You got 30% of an organization will literally resist change. How many of you know what I'm talking about? You're not having any of that. You like the way things were. Then you got 20% who actually embrace change. They understand that change is just part of the process of living. Can we agree? And so they automatically understand, I must embrace it. But then you got that 50% sitting on the fence. They're just sitting around waiting to see what happens. See if they can make an adjustment. But the bottom line is we need to make sure we embrace change, because one constant in life is that there's going to be change. Does that make sense? So if it's a constant, then we want to make sure we learn to embrace it. And one of the things Gandhi said is, be the change that you want to see in the world. That means you stay in control, because one of the things I'll be emphasizing in terms of embracing change is that you need to keep your hands on the steering wheel of your life. And most of us do not take the time or exercise the discipline to do that. So let me share with you some of the essentials to embracing change. Number one, self-mastery. Self-mastery. That is, bottom line, you got to work on who? You. Remember, you can't give away what you don't have. And remember, we get in life who we are, not just what we want. It's imperative that we consistently work on ourselves. Remember, self-development is a lifelong process. This is something you need to do on an ongoing basis. And I know the panel mentioned reading books on the way to work, doing those types of things. I've been doing those things for years, and it makes a difference. Because many people don't take the time or exercise the discipline to decide, I'm going to make myself a little bit better. I'm going to do what it takes to make sure I'm the best employee, I'm the best supervisor, I'm the best colleague that I possibly can. Most people don't do that. Most people just drift, which I'll talk about shortly. Now, how I define self-mastery is the self-confident ability to crystallize your thinking and establish an exact direction for your own life, to commit yourself to moving in that direction, and to take determined action to acquire, accomplish, or become, and identify as the ultimate goal or goals for your life. Remember, this is about you. In order to embrace change, you got to work on who? Right? It's amazing when people go to these type of programs and say, man, I wish my boss was here. Or, man, I wish my husband or my wife was here. This is about you. You can influence others by your own actions. Does that make sense? You got to work on you. Self-mastery is the very first step. Because many of us are influenced by external factors more than we should be. Now, there are certain external factors that are going to influence anyway, but many of us are not in control. Next step is to establish direction. Establish direction. And what I mean by establish a direction is that cultivate the ability to direct your thoughts and actions toward a predetermined goal or objective. That's the very essence of what it means to be proactive. That I'm deciding in advance what I want to accomplish. See, most people have never taken the time or exercise a discipline to establish a direction. Most people literally just drift through life, existing on autopilot, caught up in the routine of their daily activities. That is, many people will get up at the same time every day. They will get dressed in the exact same order. They will usually eat breakfast in the same place, eat the same food with the same people around the same time. And when it's time to go to work, you go out that same exit, get into that same car that's parked on the same side of the driveway. Then you drive to work the exact same way. Many of you will try to find that very same parking spot. Then you go into that same entrance. Then you do the same morning routine activities. Not everybody. When it's time to go to lunch, you go to lunch with the same people around the same time, to the same place, eat the same food with the same people. And when it's time to come back, you come back at the same time, go into that same entrance, do those afternoon routine activities. Again, not everybody. Then you try to go home at the same time, drive home the exact same way, park on that same side of the driveway or garage, go into that same entrance, do those same routine activities, go in and take your coat off, put your keys in, whatever you do. When it's time to relax, you sit in the same couch, same chair, watch the same television program with the same people at the same time. Then you try to go to bed at the same time, and you even sleep on the same side of the bed. Now, does any of that require thinking? No, don't get me wrong. Routine serves me well. I travel all over the world. And routine allows me to get through the airport. Routine allows me not to leave anything in hotels. But routine allows us to be efficient, not effective. It helps us be efficient. The challenge with routine is when you try to become better and you step out of that routine, how does that make you feel? And in fact, every fiber in your being is telling you to do what? Go right back to that routine. That's why it's absolutely imperative that we take a hold of the steering wheel of our lives and begin to make choices. Because routine serves us because it's not very energy intensive. Because when you start trying to be improved, you start to make change, that's going to take some energy. Can we agree? So make sure we first and foremost establish a direction. And how do we establish direction? By identifying our goals. By identifying our goals. And a goal is basically what you want to be, have, or do. It's literally that simple. By show of hands, how many of you would say that you already cultivated the habit of setting and accomplishing goals? Okay, I thought I'd see more hands. But remember, most people view goal setting as a tedious waste of time. And for me personally, this is something I've been passionate about for quite some time. Because when I graduated from high school, which is a long time ago, I graduated a senior class of 325 students. And I graduated number 320. And I remember 2 weeks before I actually graduated, seniors get a little early. I remember walking through the hall, and one of my guidance counselors walked up to me and said, "Mr. Garcia, can I see you in my office?" I'm thinking, sure. I got 2 weeks left, and I'm out. So I go to his office, and I sit next to him at his desk, and he has my transcripts sitting on his desk. And he's looking them over. And then he turns to me, he says, "I see you barely made it." But I was thinking what? I made it. Then he asked me, he said, "So what are the goals you have for your life when you leave high school?" And at that time, I had no idea what this man was talking about. In fact, one of the tragedies of our educational system is that many of us could take 12 to 18 years of education and never once have a 1 or 2 hour class on how to set and accomplish goals, even though we've been told all of our lives how important and powerful this process is. It's amazing when you teach young adults or young children how to set and accomplish goals. So he sat me down and showed me how to set goals. Then he sent me to a goal-setting class, and it changed my life. I went from barely graduating high school to becoming Dr. Garcia, to becoming self-employed the majority of my adult life. In other words, I do live a life by design and not by default. I maintain a 2 to 5 years goal program, and I monitor those goals on a monthly basis. It's absolutely important, if we're going to establish direction, that we learn to set and accomplish goals. So let me share with you some of the critical aspects of goal setting. One, when you set goals, make sure your goals are specific. See, most people set goals so vague and non-specific, they can't really access that intrinsic motivation. Remember at the beginning of the class, I said the two variables that help you do permanent improvement, permanent change. And I said variable number 2 was that you must be able to generate that intrinsic motivation, the internal drive to get yourself to take new actions. Now, one of the ways to access that intrinsic motivation is by making our goals very specific. And the greater that specificity is, the easier we have access to that intrinsic motivation. So first and foremost, make your goals very specific. Number 2, have a deadline. Have a specific deadline. See, most people use vague deadlines. Well, I'll take care by the end of the year or sometime next month. You need to have specific dates. Now, you can always modify those dates, but have a specific date. July 10th, August 20th, December 17th. Have a specific date. But more importantly, it's not what a goal is, but what a goal does for you. You set certain goals and you find yourself motivated, because I'm sure many of you have had that happen. You set something and you really want it, and it makes a difference. It's not what a goal is, but what a goal does for you. So the next step in being able to deal with change and embracing change is to have a purpose. To have a purpose. And what I mean by purpose is a reason. And I'm not talking about the whole life's purpose. No. I'm talking about have a reason to want to do good, a reason to want to be promoted, a reason to be an excellent employee, reason to be an excellent supervisor, the reason to be successful. A purpose is powerful. In fact, nothing has demonstrated to me the importance of an individual having a purpose than a book I read by a man named Dr. Viktor Frankl. And the name of his book was called Man's Search for Meaning. Now, Dr. Frankl was a psychiatrist from Vienna, but he's also a prisoner during the Holocaust and housed in death camps like Auschwitz and Dachau, stripped of everything. But the one thing he talks about in his book, he said, those who survive, and remember, not everybody had the opportunity to survive. He said those who had the opportunity to survived because they had a reason to survive. They had a purpose for survival. Whether that reason or purpose was to get future justice from their captors, to be reunited with their family members, or just accomplish a goal that they had set. But they survived because they had a reason to survive. He said those had no reason, no purpose, died easily and died quickly. Very powerful. In fact, Patanjali's, who's the father of modern yoga, he said, when you are inspired by some great purpose, some extraordinary project, all of your thoughts break their bonds. Your mind transcends limitations. Your consciousness expands in every direction, and you discover yourself to be in a brave, new, and wonderful world. He also said something very powerful. He said, dormant forces, faculties, and talents come alive, and you discover yourself to be a greater person by far than you ever dreamed yourself to be when you're inspired by a purpose. We all need to find out, what is our purpose? I know for me, I've been doing this type of training for about 27 years, and I train leaders from all over the federal government, and we need good leadership now more than ever. And I'm driven to make sure everybody in here, everything you do matters. We need strong government. Can we agree? And you have to recognize everything you do makes a difference. And for me, this is my country. I have kids and grandkids, and I need you guys to do a fantastic job. But in order to do a fantastic job, you got to feel good about who you are. Does that make sense? You got to work on you and recognize everything you do matters. And that's very important. Have a purpose. Second, have a positive attitude. It's amazing how many people walk around with poor attitudes. How many know what I'm talking about? The thing about attitude, it's a choice. That's the power of attitude, because it affects every area of your life. Every area. And the good thing is I can choose. I can decide to see that glass as half empty or half full. I could choose. See, when it comes to attitude, most of us are very reactive in our attitude. Well, I have a good attitude if my boss treats me better. I have a good attitude if my kids act normal. I have a better attitude if this or that, waiting on something outside of you to determine how you're supposed to feel. Now, don't get me wrong, it's very difficult to subordinate an impulse to a value, but it is possible. Choose your attitude, because your attitude is extraordinarily powerful. I wake up every day, hey, today is going to be a fantastic day. I could choose that. And it makes a difference how much energy you're able to generate, how you approach everything. You need to control your attitude and not let other people control. In fact, I was in North Carolina not too long ago. And I was there to do some training. And it was a quick 1-hour training. And I was coming home, going back to the airport because I was going home early because I live in Columbus, Ohio. And I knew I was getting home early, so I was excited. It was like 75 degrees outside. Man, I had my rental car shot to the airport. Dropped the rental car, ran into the airport because I knew I'm going to be home early because I travel a lot. I'm always home really late. And I'm going to be home like noon. I was happy. And I get in the airport and lines are almost out the door. If you travel, you know what that means. They're canceling flights. The one time I could be home early, and they're canceling flights. So what normally took me 20 minutes to go through the line and get my ticket, another 20 minutes goes to security, and I'm sitting at my gate. It took me 2 hours just to get my ticket to leave the next day. But during that 2-hour wait, I'm observing the ticket agents. Because I'm in a lot of airports, so I like to get material, so I people watch. So I'm observing the ticket agents, 5 of them, 2 of whom were trainees. So you can imagine how those affected some of the potential passengers. But I was watching the young lady in my line, and I say young lady because she appeared to be late 20s, early 30s. She was also clearly the boss, the supervisor, because everybody kept coming to her. Now, I've been traveling for over 25 years on a regular basis, and I have never seen the level of abuse that people were spewing on her as though she had some power to do something. They were treating her as if she had the power to put them on an aircraft, a plane, fly them through a thunderstorm, and drop them off at home. They kept attacking her. Not only did I say something, but so did many other people said, man, leave her alone. But in spite of all that vitriol and abuse, she never once reacted. She never once lost her smile. She never once delivered poor customer service. I sat back in amazement. Somebody so young had that kind of stoicism. I'm a psychologist. I was losing my mind. And yet she never blinked. And for 2 hours, I observed her. And by the time I got to the front line, I said, excuse me, I have been watching you. You are one impressive young lady. How are you doing that? And then she put me in first class, which was not my intent. She said, I appreciate you saying that, sir. But first of all, I love my job. Second, I love people. And third, I thank God I have a job. And I said, you are one amazing person. And I'm going to talk about you in some of my classes because she reminded me of one of my favorite stories of the 3 stonecutters. You have 3 men all engaged in the exact same set of actions. All 3 of these men were cutting stones. A woman walks to the first man and says, excuse me, sir, what are you doing? The first man responded by saying, I'm earning a living by cutting stones. And the miserable way it is to earn a living, but it puts food on the table. She approached the second man and said, excuse me, sir, what are you doing? The second man said, I'm cutting stones exactly 3 inches by 9 inches by 5 inches. I don't really like the work, but I am pretty good at the work, and it pays my bills. She approached the third man and said, excuse me, sir, what are you doing? The third man lifted the stone at eye level. He said, I am building a cathedral. In fact, I'm building the most beautiful cathedral ever designed by man. 3 men doing identical work, 3 totally different attitudes. Now, keep in mind, the principle remains the same. Whether we're talking about a stone cutter, a supervisor, a lawyer, or a father. I have personally met wealthy presidents of large organizations who are just earning a living, and waitresses who are building cathedrals. The one thing I observed in that young lady, she was clearly building a cathedral. That was her attitude about her work. So you got to ask yourself, am I just earning a living? Or am I building a cathedral? I know I'm building a cathedral. And you got to ask yourself, is my attitude one of building a cathedral, or am I just trying to pay the bills? Because you're not going to be able to generate the same level of energy and excitement and passion just paying the bills. Does that make sense? As you would if you were building a cathedral. See, my philosophy is this. If you're going to do it, you do it well. Because it's amazing how many people will work at a job for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30, even 40 years and never once try to become the absolute best they can become. 40 years and they never gave it their all. That's astounding to me. Because one of the things they don't understand is that it takes just as much time and energy to do a mediocre or a bad job as it does a good job. The only difference is there's more perks if you do a good job. And once again, if you're going to do it, you do it well. Take a look at your attitude. Is my attitude of one, okay, I just want to pay the bills, or am I really making a difference? Because whether you accept that or not, you are making a difference. You might as well see yourself as someone who is making a difference because you really are. In other words, you must think, act, talk, walk, and conduct yourself as if you already become the person you want to become. This is powerful. I read this years ago when I knew I wanted to become doing what I'm doing today. And I want to become a psychologist, and I want to become Dr. Garcia. I was only a junior in college, boy. I would go to school. I worked at UPS, but I go to school dressed in suits. I mean, you couldn't tell me I was already Dr. Garcia. I was an undergrad thinking I'm already Dr. Garcia. I even hang out at the teacher's lounge and everything. They thought I was one of them. But it makes a difference. If you're talking about, one day I'm going to ask this, you better start acting like it. Is this making sense? You got to start thinking about it, acting like it. That's you. You don't get in life what you want. You get in life who you are. You got to see yourself. Nobody could have told me, hey, I'm not Dr. Garcia back then. I was Dr. Garcia back then before I had a degree. Because I was a man who barely graduated high school. What changed? Here. I got passionate about life. I had some direction. Change is part of the process. But regardless of all the external change that takes place, you got to stay consistent to who you are and what you want, and be flexible to that process. Does that make sense? This is all this is about you and what you could do to improve yourself. You improve yourself, you can improve others. You can't give away what you don't have. You can't help your colleague. You can't help your family. You can't help this person if you ain't got it yourself. Can we agree? The next is building positive relationships. Is building positive relationships. In fact, I can't think of too many things that are more important in any organization or even in life than building as many positive relationships as possible. But we got to keep in mind, this requires a conscious and deliberate effort on our part. For many people, it's not that easy. It doesn't automatically happen. Now, clearly, there are times where you meet people for the very first time. You don't know anything about them. And boom, an instant meeting of the minds. How many of you know what I'm talking about? You just automatically feel you. I feel you. You got that connection. It's easy to begin to build relationships, that assets. But also you meet people for the very first time. You don't know anything about them, and boom, you hate their guts. How many know what I'm talking about? You just don't like this. Something about you says, hey, I don't feel you. How many know what I mean? You don't even know what it is. But something about that person, it just rubbed you wrong. And it happens to all of us. You know, the challenge is if you're going to be working with that person on a regular basis, you got to figure out what that is. Because many of us are not willing to evaluate these, these poor feelings that we get from people out of the blues. So we need to begin to question those poor feelings. We need to begin to question and take a look at it. In fact, when I was in New York not too long ago, I was going to a symposium for trainers. And I got off the plane and I went out to get a cab because the symposium was only like 5 miles down the road. And I'm getting a cab and I'm telling the cab driver where I wanted to go. And there was an individual standing next to me who overheard me giving the cab driver the location. He said, excuse me, sir, I'm going to the same place. You mind if we share a cab? Now, if you're taking a cab in New York, you know what I said. Get in. So we get in the cab, and we're headed to the location, but it's only 5 miles away. But you know, in 5 miles in New York, that's at least an hour and a half. So we're in that cab for about an hour, 15 minutes, and we're talking about two people who talk for a living, and nothing's being said. For me personally, I got the weird feeling. Some of you know what I'm talking about. I don't even know. I've never seen this guy before, but I'm in a cab, and we're talking about two people who talk for a living, and it's silent. Something wasn't right. I don't know what he felt about me, but I know he was strange. It didn't feel right. So we get to the symposium, and I'm walking around, trying to meet people, looking around, and every time I turn around, there he was. I'm thinking, man, this guy's following me. Let me make 2 rights to the left and see if he's still there. And sure enough, there he was. And I'm thinking, what am I doing? This went on for like an hour. I'm thinking, what am I doing? I go to these things to network, to make friends, to try to generate business, and I'm running from somebody. And I teach this. So I said, well, I got to figure out what's going on. So I turned and went to him and said, oh, excuse me. I see you're going to the same places I'm going. Instead of saying, man, you're following me, man. And then we're starting to talk a little bit. And I'm trying to figure out what was it that gave me that red flag. See, many of us never take that time to evaluate that. Can we agree? We just, I don't like you. We didn't know why. And I'm saying, I'm trying to evaluate it, and about 20 minutes later, I figured out what it was. And it was subconscious, because it's not always a conscious response. Can we agree? Because you don't know. Is that, and I'm figuring out, okay, this is what it was. It was just something that turned me off, because we're speakers. Is that when he talked, he closed his eyes. Anybody ever seen that? Ain't nothing wrong with it, but some people are like that. When words come out of their mouth, their eyes are closed. No, I'm serious. Those who know what I'm talking about. It's not nothing wrong. And he'll talk, hey, Alex, how you doing, man? Hey, we going to check that out? Yep, I saw that. And, and somehow, subconsciously, got me. And the first thing that came to my mind is, how is he a trainer? But I found out after we got to know each other that he wasn't a trainer. He was a member of the Department of Defense looking for trainers. And, and I ended up really bonding with individual. We established great rapport, and I've been doing business with him for the last 6-7 years. Had I not investigated that and questioned that red flag, I would have lost that. See, relationships are powerful. And remember, we got to take the lead on that. We got to be proactive when it comes to relationships. Because what happens to many people is that they will join an organization, and they'll run across that one person who will walk up to them and say, welcome aboard. We're glad you're on our team. But stay away from Tracy, man. She's kind of crazy. Welcome aboard. We're glad you're on the team. But watch Tom, man. He's going to try to get you to do his work. Then you find that they gravitate toward different factions or cliques, cultivating the mindset of that particular group that they're hanging around. That's what requires a conscious and deliberate effort on your part. No, I'm not referring to relationships where you are hanging out with the person, but relationships based on trust, respect, integrity, and fairness. Trust, respect, integrity, and fairness. Because my philosophy is this. If you're going to be working with these individuals, anywhere from 8 to 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, it's to your advantage as well as theirs to have a good relationship. Can we agree? In fact, many of us don't realize most people spend more time at work than they do at home, which means the majority of your life is where? At work. You better make that the best, most fun possible place to be. You spend so much time there. And it's amazing how many people still latch on to that old phrase, thank God it's Friday. Living for 2 days. Can't wait till Friday, like, oh, now I can start living. Then some Sunday night, oh, back to the grind. This is your life. Am I making sense? You got to make this, you got to get along with these people. You got to find a way, because so much of your life is there. And make it fun. And as a disciple, you're going to have drama. That's part of life. But make it a very good place to be. Because I can't imagine going to a place 5 days a week, hanging around people I don't like and they don't like me. Going to a place 5 days a week and hanging around people I don't know and they don't know me. Because you have those people say, well, this is business. Keep the personal stuff out of it. That's a crock. That's not true. You just didn't hit the right point. That's life. And most of us like to separate that. Well, no, not really. Friday and Saturday is really life. When all of it is life. Can we agree? So it's very important that we recognize that we have to consciously and deliberately build these relationships. Find a way. So let me share you some of the ways in which to build relationships. The first way to build or improve relationships is to establish rapport. See, if you don't have rapport, you got to be politically correct. How many know what I'm talking about? You got to watch what you say, what you do, how you stand, how you even fold your arms. You fold your arms, what is you thinking? Because they don't know. With rapport, you can say just about anything. I have a small staff of 6, and I call my second in command. I walk in the office, and I want to talk about sports. And she says, Alice, get out. Now, if we wouldn't have rapport, I would say, she's being insubordinate. But because we have rapport, what do we think I do? I get out. But it's fun when you got rapport. It's not energy intensive at all. When you have to be politically correct, you got to watch everything you do. That's too much pressure. You got to find a way to make that connection with people. It don't mean you hanging out with them, going to lunch with them, going out with them, none of that. It's just having that mutual meeting of the minds. Am I making sense here? That rapport is crucial. So first and foremost, have rapport. Second, show some genuine interest when you're trying to build your relationship. Genuine interest. What I mean by genuine interest is that you got to find something that's interesting. See, for me, when I travel in and out of the country, I do a lot of outside of the country, in this country, I come back, I got to go see my people. You know, the first thing I go see them. And then I talk about what they want to talk about. How many know what I'm talking about? Okay? And I know one of them, Latricia. And she has a young daughter that's 9, Sierra. Latricia don't want to talk about Latricia. Latricia want to talk about Sierra and how she's doing in her dance and her ballet. So once I walk in, I say, hey, Latricia, how you doing? Well, how's Sierra doing in ballet? And she lights up like a light bulb. Oh, Alex, let me tell you what she's doing now. Let me tell you. And she goes on and on and on and on. I got to cut her off. Latricia, I got it. But I've even attended those, what do you call them? Recitals. Anybody been in those things? But why would I do that? Keeping that rapport. Because I know if I'm in another country, I lose my credit card, man, my team will be there on the spot. We got you. Those are positive relations. Particularly if you're serious about going into leadership or you're in leadership, relationships are everything. And establishing that rapport. So show some genuine interest in your people and in your colleagues. 2, practice basic good manners. It sounds so simple, but it's amazing how many people just let that go. Basic good manners are everything. And that's one thing I put in my staff, have good manners. Please and thank you are powerful. I never stop using them because we're all taught. I have 4 grandchildren. And I know when I give the youngest one a cookie, because the other ones are older, you know, first thing comes out of my mouth is what? What do you say? Thank you, Paw. And I love that too. Love that. We all been taught please and thank you. Can't we agree? But what happens to many of us, we get familiar and comfortable with people, and good manners go out the window. Get everybody in the conference room. Hand me that book. No please, no thank you. It's absolutely imperative we practice on a consistent basis. People notices those things. Could you imagine open the door and someone just walking on in, don't do nothing? Most of us will lose our mind. Or we'll look at them and say, you're welcome. You know, we got to remember those types of things. Please and thank you are powerful. And for me, that's everything. You know, even in traffic, you let somebody in, what do you want to see? You better show me a hand. How many of you look for that hand? Because I'll be looking for that hand. Like, did he give me a hand? They don't show you a hand, you get upset. Oh, you done messed it up for everybody. Ain't nobody getting in now. Ain't nobody getting in now. We look for that. How many make sure you give a hand? I will roll down that window. Let them know how much I appreciate that. Because those things make a difference. So practice those good manners. Also, be real. There's too many fake people. How many know what I'm talking about? And then they act like you don't know that they're fake. We don't say nothing because we don't want to embarrass them, but we'll tell our friends, yeah, you see that fake? Some of you know what I'm talking about. You cannot create those good relationships if you come off wrong, fake. Be yourself. Hey, I know there's going to be a million people who like Alex Garcia and a million people who won't. But I'm going to be me. That makes sense? Be who you really are. Accept who you are. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. It's very important that we do that. So be real. And finally, learn to deal with difficult people in difficult situations. Because we all have difficult people. In fact, how many of you have had to deal with a difficult person? Now, if they're here, don't raise your hand. Don't raise your hand. I did an organization. One put her hand up and looked dead at him. Then put the other hand up. So I said, if they're here, don't take that. We all have dealt with a difficult person. I know I have my difficult people, and we all have our difficult people. Who may be difficult for me may not be difficult for Tammy. We all have our difficult people. The key with dealing with difficult people is not to be reactive, but to be what? Proactive. Now remember, don't get me wrong, it's very difficult to subordinate that impulse to a value, but we have to learn, because every time you react to a difficult person, you are in effect giving them your power. Then you get mad because they use it. And some people will use it, won't they? If they know they can push your buttons, they can't wait to see you come in. Oh, here she come, here she come. Boop, there you go. Here she come, boop, there you go. Basically saying, I cannot stop doing this until they stop doing that. Too much power. Challenging, don't get me wrong, but it's too much power we have to be more proactive and not allow ourselves to react, because some people are so reactive, they will just see that person's car and have a reaction. Oh, my God, they came in an hour early today. Start to sweat, blood pressure's up. You ain't even seen the person yet. And you're already losing it. And that's challenging, because dealing with difficult people is not always easy. I know for me at one point it wasn't, because I remember I got my first real job. And I say real job is that when I first graduated with my bachelor's degree, boy, I was happy. How many know what I'm talking about? You couldn't tell me nothing. I'm a professional. And I already had my goals program, so I know what I want to do, which is what I'm doing now. And so I graduated. Now I'm ready to move into my career. And I'm looking through the newspaper. For you young people, yeah, newspaper, wasn't no internet. A newspaper. So I'm looking through the newspaper. There it was, my first step on my goals program. So you got to circle it. Say, yeah, we had to circle it back there too. And I'm thinking, they put that job in there for me. I don't know what anybody else saw it, but that was my job. In my mind, that was it. I was so happy you couldn't, because I just graduated. I would have been out of school for like a month, and there's my first step on my goals program. So I completed my resume, sent it in. 2 weeks later, I get a call. Mr. Garcia, would you like to come in for an interview? You know that, what that told me. Yep, I knew it. That was my job. So I go to interview, and 27 people is there applying for that job. And they put us in like an auditorium. We were almost having to interview in front of each other just about. You could hear the interview. But, of course, I'm there thinking, what? These people all wasted their time. That job is mine. And I mean, I'm confident because it was like perfect for my first step. So after 2 weeks, there was only 5 of us left. And they said, well, listen, next week we're going to interview all 5 of you. We will call each of you and let you know whether you got the job or not. So at week 5, the end of that week came up, so we all went to the interview. And then they said we were going to call. I thought they did a fantastic job, but so did the other 4. So I'm at home waiting for the call, pacing. Waiting to get my job, because, of course, in my mind, it's mine. But I'm still pacing. Then the phone rings. I can't really just pick it up. I got to let it ring a couple of times so I didn't seem too anxious. So it rings a couple of times. I answer the phone. And it says, congratulations, Mr. Garcia, and welcome aboard. Told you. That's what I was thinking. I told these people they're going to save all that money and time if they just hired me from go. I was so excited I couldn't even sleep. Some of you know what I'm talking about. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't wait to have my suit all laid out, ready to go. I'm like, oh, I'm really a professional now. I'm buying me a new car. I can eat. I'm ready to go. I'm excited. And I can go to work dressed like this and get paid. So I'm extraordinarily excited. I get to work, go to human resource, fill out all that paperwork. I got done with the paperwork. They said, you need to go down and meet your supervisor. She was not part of the interviewing process because she was on sabbatical. But she's in her office waiting to meet you. I shoot down, and she's there. They said, it's the last door on the left. Go all the way down to the end of the hall. Last door on the left, she's in there. I said, thank you. Ran out there, shot down at office. And I get to her office, and there's a little window in the door. So I'm looking in that window, and I see her at her desk writing. And the first thing came to my mind is, man, I want this office. Day 1 on my job, and I want my supervisor's office. Because it was sweet. It had the couch and the table. Some of you know what I'm talking about. It was like, yes. So anyways, I knock on the door, and no response. I'm looking right at her. I knock again. She just kept writing. I get one of these knocks, and nothing. I'm thinking, is she hearing impaired? Because I don't know. Nobody told me. So I walked in. I opened the door. I walked in, and she's still writing. And I stick my hand out, and I said, good morning. I'm Alex Garcia. I think you were expecting me. No, I know she's not blind because she's writing. And she can see my hand, and she still ignores me. And, of course, I'm thinking, what is going on here? Excuse me, I'm Alex Garcia. I think you were expecting me. And nothing. So I'm sitting there waiting to see what happens. What seemed like an attorney was only a few minutes later, and she puts her pencil down and lifts her hands up and leans back and said, you're Alex Garcia? I thought you were Puerto Rican. I swear. I said, my father's Hispanic. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. Now get over there and sit down. In that same tone. Day 1. I wanted the job, so I went over there and sat out. So I sat on the couch and waited for her. She wrote it for a few more minutes. She finally gets up, and she walks over to the couch. Of course, I stand up. I'm Alex Garcia, and she points in my face. True story. I'm only going to say this once. And I'm cutting you a break because you're new. Don't you ever walk into my office. You keep your butt outside, and you knock until you see me signal you to come in, or you hear me say come in. You got that? Day one of my dream job, and I got Satan for a boss. And I said, I apologize. Don't apologize. Let's go. Let me introduce you to the team. So she took me around and introduced me to the team, and I realized she talked like that to everybody. I was not special. Management let her get away with it because she was good at what she did. And I also found out that 4 other people had that job in the last 2 months. And what do you think they did? They quit. Hey, I'm not quitting. I need that job. I already put a down payment on a new car. I'm keeping that job. And more importantly, I'm not letting this woman run me off. This is my first step on my goals program. So I made a commitment to myself. I put myself on a mission. I said, I'm not leaving this job until I win her over. In fact, I'm going to kill her with, now don't get me wrong, it's very difficult to kill someone with kindness when they're talking to you like you're a child. It's very difficult to kill someone with kindness when they focus on everything you do wrong and never talk about anything you do right. But I'm on a mission. And I said, I'm not even leaving this organization or even ask for promotion until I win her over. So that following morning, I come to work, and she put my office right next to hers. And her door's cracked because I definitely wasn't walking in. And I walk in the morning, I see her in the morning because she's one of those people who came early in the morning and left real late. So I peek my head in, good morning, how are you doing today? Nothing. Anybody have that happen? Didn't even look at me. Next day, good morning, how are you doing today? Nothing. That went over like 2.5, almost 3 weeks. Every morning, good morning, how are you doing? She didn't even give me the courtesy of a look. Just total ignoring me. So I'm on a mission. Back here, week 3, almost week 4. Good morning, how are you doing? That one Monday morning when I did that, she slams this book she was looking at and said, Garcia, get in here. And one thing about this woman, she never used anyone's first name. It was always Garcia, Johnson, whatever. No first name. Garcia, get in here. I come in. I'm only going to say this once. I don't want to hear your mouth in the morning. I don't care if it's a good morning for you or anybody else. You don't talk to me until I talk to you. Now get out. I'm only there a month, and I'm beginning to hate this person. And I don't hate. I mean, it started having a physical effect. How many know what I'm talking about? I mean, and I loved my work. But this difficult person was killing me. So anyways, I left. And this was a Friday. That following Monday, I come in, and her door's cracked. Good morning, how you doing? She gave me a look like, no, he didn't. And I kept doing it. In fact, she started avoiding me. I go looking for her. Where's she at? Good morning, how you doing? I would go looking for her. And that went on for like a month, and she kept avoiding me. And then finally, I apparently made her angry. And we had an agreement. I was working on my master's degree, so I couldn't work late. And she knew this. So, of course, me checking her, she said, Garcia, get over here. Okay, Mr. College boy, you want to play hardball. I need you to work with me all week late. No, and I got class. But I cannot give her the satisfaction that everybody else was giving her, even though she was destroying me. I mean, I was beginning to lose weight. I lost like 10 pounds. My immune system was compromised. My nose was running all the time. I was coughing. How many know what I'm talking about? You had nightmares. I was having dreams of what I wanted to do to her. How many know what I'm talking about? But I was fighting it. But it kept getting worse. So I worked all week with her late, missed some of my classes. And, I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. And, I seriously got to a point where I'm not quitting, but it was close. How many know what I'm talking about? It was close, but I'm not giving her that satisfaction. Then, of course, I still kept it. Good morning. I still kept it on. In fact, by the 3rd or 4th month, I found out she liked these like fried cake donuts. So I would buy these little fried cake donuts and bring her a donut once a week and a small cup of coffee. Run into her office, drop it off, take off. True story. She would eat that donut and drink the coffee and make sure I saw her doing it and never said thank you. She walked right past me. Stopped, take a sip of the coffee, looked right at me. No, thank you. I appreciate it. Just. By that time, I was losing it. My dreams were being invaded. It was just, I hardly could sleep. It was horrible. Somebody know what I'm talking about. I started having physical manifestations of the anger. I mean, it started to really hurt me. And I'm trying and trying, but I'm still not giving up because I'm going to win this woman over. We finally get into like the 6th month, almost 7th month. And me and my colleagues, we're in the break room. And we're telling jokes, having a good time. Excuse me. And we're laughing, having fun, and she walks in. And one of my colleagues was telling her the jokes, listen to this, and told her a couple of them, and she didn't even crack a smile. She gave me a look like, why are you telling me this? While the rest of us were just having stomach cramps from the laughter. And I had an epiphany or a paradigm shift. And I looked at her, and I went from hating this woman to feeling sorry for her. Because I began to ask myself, I've never seen her laugh. I've never even seen her smile. All this time, I never see her never laugh or smile. And I thought to myself, how does someone have absolutely no light in them? It was sad. My heart dropped. I couldn't believe it. And I changed my whole mission. That day, everything changed. I mean, I changed my mission to just trying to win her over. I just want to see her smile once. And once I changed and had an epiphany on how I saw me, because I didn't fear her, I didn't hate her, I just felt sorry for somebody who was such a sad human being with so much potential and so much skill, because I learned a great deal from her. And so everything changed. I mean, my weight recovered, my immune system recovered, I gained my weight back, my attitude was changed, my sleep was sound, and I don't care what she said to me, it didn't have any effect, no negative effect. Garcia, get over here. Yes, ma'am. In fact, my whole performance, my attitude, everything kicked up a notch. I went out of my way to help this one person who was evil and mean because I was trying to make her smile. Remember, we got to accept the fact you can't change anybody. The only person who can change is who? Self, right. She didn't change. I did. Am I making sense? I mean, in this true story, it was gone. And nothing she could do. I don't care how whatever she said, it didn't make a sense. I didn't care. I mean, whatever she wanted, I doubled it. I did extra work. I stayed as late as I could. After you need anything, this went on one day before my 1-year anniversary. One of my colleagues comes to me and says, Alex, the devil wants to see you. And no joke, we used to call her that. And I'm thinking, what did I do? Because she'll bust you out in front of people, but she gets you in the confines of her office. The abuse is at a whole new level. So I'm walking slow, trying to figure out what the heck I done, because I make sure my game was on point for her, because I wanted it that way. And I'm walking, and I get to her office, and I knock, and she says, come in, Alex. Alex. I mean, in a year, she never called me Alex Garcia. And the first thing came to my mind was, what new sadistic type abuse does she got for me now? And I didn't do nothing. And he said, come in. So I came in. I said, you want to see me? He says, yes, have a seat, Al. I sat down, and she said, listen, we're going to promote you, and I want you to work directly with me. And I want your opinion on some of these evaluations. And we had our first normal professional conversation. And this was what, almost 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago? And we are still friends today. That woman is my good friend. She's still the evil person. Don't get me wrong. She really is. And I remember when I became a psychologist and I wanted to help her, she said, keep that psychobabble stuff away from me. But I eventually made her smile. But I found out that she was in an arranged marriage, hates the man, an abusive situation, and nobody knows it. See, we don't always know what's going on in other people's lives when they're difficult. And she never told anybody those things. Me and her have been friends for years, and we still have lunch maybe once a month. She's an incredible person. It's sad to me to watch my friend, even to this day, because she's been sad for so long, she feels uncomfortable being happy. It's a terrible situation for my friend, and it hurts me to have that talk about. But see, bottom line is when we talk about dealing with people, one of the things Dr. Viktor Frankl talks about in that book I mentioned, Man's Search for Meaning, what he calls the last of the human freedoms. And that is, we can choose how we respond in any circumstance. They call it the last of human freedoms. We can choose how we respond. You can't control other people, but you can control yourself. It's only that I had the fortune to have that epiphany and saw a woman that was in a bad shape that it changed my relationship. So remember, don't expect that so-called difficult person to change. Who has to change? This is about you. Because you cannot change anyone else, but you can change yourself in terms of dealing with difficult people. And then one of the other very important aspects is your self-esteem. In fact, the self-esteem is the single most outwardly identifiable trait of all high achievers. In fact, what is the self-esteem? Who can tell me? There it is. Exactly. How you feel about you. And keep in mind, it has absolutely nothing to do with how others feel about you. It is your own evaluation of self that has all of the power. And believe me when I say this affects every area of your life. And for me, this has been huge because I grew up as a preteen, one of those really weak, low self-esteem preteens, because I went to school, a lot of people didn't look like me. I didn't want to be me. I didn't feel very good about me. And I was one of those kids who would go to the store with $5, buy something that cost $3. If they didn't give me my change back, I was too afraid to ask for it. That's what my self-esteem was. Of course, I go home and tell my mom, what would she say? You better go back and get that change. I'm like, oh, God, I should have asked for it. But self-esteem is incredibly powerful. And you have to consistently work on it. Because, in fact, there are some studies that says as much as 35 to 40% of 15-year-olds and above, 15-year-olds and 18-year-olds are walking with low self-esteem. That is very dangerous, which means they're capable of doing almost anything. And some studies also suggest that 25 to 30% of adults, 21 years of age and older, are walking with low self-esteem. It's incredibly powerful that you have to work on that self-esteem regularly because, remember, most people are outwardly directed, particularly if you watch a lot of television. In fact, I consider television the most subtle form of brainwashing ever devised by the mind of man. Behind all the commercials is, you're not enough. If you don't wear those shoes, you don't weigh this much, you don't look like this, you're not enough, and we buy it. That's why I've always regulated what I put in his head and my kid's head. And self-esteem is extraordinarily powerful, particularly if you're in a leadership position or hope to be, or you got kids, you better work on their self-esteem. Because I don't care how much better, if they get good grades, or they're outstanding students, they're always on time, but if you don't like who you are, you miss the boat. Does that make sense? Self-esteem is powerful. I got 4 daughters and 1 son, all grown and gone, thank God. But I taught them kids, boy, how beautiful they are, how smart, how intelligent, how capable, how athletic, I made sure they felt good about them because I know what it was like for me because I had to build my self-esteem. I like me some me because you can't give away what you don't have. How am I going to teach my kid, my colleagues, my subordinates to like themselves without any like me? You know, people find themselves in a relationship, well, you better make me like me. Or I want you to like me, but I don't like me, but you better like me. We got to work on ourselves. We got to learn to work on that self-esteem because with self-esteem, certain things you just don't speak up. There's certain things you don't do. And you can always tell people with self-esteem issues, they always sit in the back of the room. They don't want to speak up. I was in the airport not too long ago, and this guy, he just ate a powdery donut. He had all kind of white powder all over his mouth. And he sat there and talked to this woman. They were like a few inches apart and talked for 5 minutes. And she said nothing. I'm back to losing my mind. I'm bouncing up to my, say something. And he said nothing. That's self-esteem issues. You know, and then she walked away. And he started walking away all cool. I said, man, hold up. You got stuff all over your face, man. And he said, what? And she said nothing. You know, I mean, come on, because some of us would do that. You will see somebody walk out of the bathroom with toilet paper on their shoe. You won't say nothing to them, but you go to your girl. Whoo, do you see that? Because you don't speak up. But that's part of the deal. That's part of the self-esteem. Because you absolutely have to work on it. Because we all have those high self-esteem days. You know those days that you just got promoted. You lost some weight. Your hair looks good. You got plenty of sleep. Kids acting right. You walk around with a bounce in your step. For many people, that's the exception and not the rule. Not everybody has a perfect self-esteem. My self-esteem is intact, but not every day. You know, I'm on an elevator with a bunch of people, and I talk for a living. But you go in an elevator, everybody's doing one thing, either looking at the ground or looking at the floor. You know, every once in a while their eyes will do that. But me, I talk for a little. I say, good morning, how you guys doing? Because I'm feeling good about me. How many know what I'm talking about? And then everybody starts talking and they get open for the most part. But there's days I'm like everybody else, looking down like, don't say nothing to me. But those are the exception. We have to make sure we work on ourselves. We got to feel good about who you are, because individuals with low self-esteem, they have feelings of inadequacy. They feel inadequate, insecurity, a lot of self-doubt. They have guilt. They even have guilt when they succeed. How many know what I'm talking about? Congratulations on that promotion. No, it wasn't really nothing. You almost feel guilty. You know, and I do a lot of different trainings, different places. Man, I do some training in an organization, and this woman just bought, she was a GS15, just bought a new Mercedes C300 and wouldn't drive it to work. Afraid what everybody going to say. I said, are you crazy? You better push that ride. It's not like she stole it. She earned that. How many know what I'm talking about? But if you don't get your self-esteem intact, you ain't even comfortable doing that. Feel guilty. Well, you making good money, ain't you? Not really. You kicking it. They have a fear of full participation in life. In other words, they feel like I'm not enough. That's sad when it comes to self-esteem. In fact, some of the rewards of high self-esteem, you're able to speak your mind. See, this is crucial, particularly because learning to be assertive is important. And you're not going to be assertive without a healthy self-concept, without healthy self-esteem. Because most people are what I call passive and passive-aggressive. We're going to talk about that, but we ain't got time. You're usually nice and friendly because you feel good about who you are. Is this making sense? You have a sense of humor. You believe in your abilities. That is so important when you talk about promotion. Believe in your abilities. You're willing to move out of your comfort zone. Keep in mind, there is no growth without discomfort. There is no growth without discomfort. Discomfort is part of the equation. That's how you move forward. That's how you grow. So you got to learn to move out of your comfort zone. And more importantly, you're good with people. See, people skills are the foundation for those who move up in their organizations. You got to know how to deal and work with people. Does that make sense? That is so important. Now, ways to improve your self-esteem is one, engage in acts of kindness. In fact, science conclusively shows that every time you engage in an act of kindness, and in some cases just observe an act of kindness, there's an increase in serotonin and endorphin levels in your system. You feel better. Some of you know what I'm talking about. You just feel good. I make sure I engage in an act of kindness every day. I'm conscious of that. I need my self-esteem injection. How we treat other people says a great deal about who you really are. It says a great deal about you, your character. Treat people good. And engage in these acts of kindness make a difference in terms of improving your self-esteem. Engage in a lot of positive self-talk. Watch what you say to yourself. The words you say to yourself have a greater impact than anything anybody can say to you. It's called neurolinguistic programming. You keep telling yourself certain things, it begins to manifest itself. If you say anything, make sure it's positive. Treat everyone with respect, unless they give you reasons not to. Everyone respect. I don't care who they are. I don't care where I go. I don't care if you're the president of the organization or the man or woman who's cleaning my hotel room. I give them 100% respect. Thank you, sir. I go talk to them. I tell them how much I appreciate what they do. See, when you feel good about you, you're able to do that to other people. When you don't like who you are, everybody's a threat. Does that make sense? You got to work on you. Feel good about you. You got to feel good about you. The best life in the world is given to yourself so you can give yourself to others. You got to continue to work on you. You feel good about you. You feel you could almost do anything. If you raise your self-esteem just 1%, you see the world differently. Because remember, it is not what you are that will hold you back or prevent you from achieving any goal or objective. It's what you think you are not. See, individuals behave not according to reality, but according to their perception of reality. Your perception. 4, dress and look your best as often as you can. Because if you feel good like that, that will increase your self-esteem. I started learning that a long time ago, especially on Sundays you go to church. What do you put on? The church clothes. You be looking good. Boy, I remember I started wearing the church clothes. Boy, I'd be good. I feel good. I mean, you come home and everybody's, what does your mom say when you come home? Take off them church clothes. I'd be like, Mom, give me just one more hour, because I was feeling good. Give me another hour. Yeah, you see what I'm saying? When you feel good about you, things change. Does that make sense? And so that's why I started dressing like this. Even in school, when I was in college, if it made me feel good, my self-esteem was increased. The key is, if my self-esteem feels good, I'm able to help other people. Accept yourself for who you are in an entirety. Of course, there's always things about ourselves that we don't like. Accept those things that you can't change. And then change the things that you can. We heard that for years. But we got to accept who we are. Don't wish we somebody else. It's amazing how many people on this planet walk around wishing they were somebody else, even though they're more than enough. Learn to accept yourself. And then set your own internal standards, because in life, no matter what we get, we will always get our standards, no matter what it is. Whatever your standards are, some of your standards will say, listen, there's no way that something's coming off my desk that's not an excellent piece of work. How many know what I'm talking about? You don't want to do a sloppy job. I know, I've literally taught almost every federal agency. And one thing I find, particularly in the leadership of the federal government, is, man, they want to do a good job. That's a standard. Some people's standard is, man, I get up, I got to get my butt to the gym. That's a standard. So remember, make your own internal standards. And this part, listening. Because most people have been taught how to read, how to write, how to speak. Most people have not been taught how to listen. When it comes to listening, most people listen with the intent to respond. That is, while the other person is talking, you're already trying to formulate your response. Now, since the mind can only hold one thought at a time, if you're formulating your response, are you listening? No. And remember, listening requires an expenditure of energy. It's not a passive process. In fact, one of the things in Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, he says, seek first to understand, then to be understood. And that's difficult. So let me share you some of the ways in which people listen. Number one is called ignoring or pretend listening. What's that? We've all done it. We've all been a victim of it. You pretend you listen, you ignore, you're someplace else. Number two, passive listening. This is most people's favorite way of listening. That is, someone will walk into your office or your cubicle, ask you got a second? You say, yeah. And while they're talking to you, you're typing an email. And the only thing you give them the head nod, like, I got you. Yeah, I hear you. You're not really listening. But this is how most people listen. Because remember, listening requires an expenditure of energy. Then you have selective listening. In other words, you hear what you want to hear. Now, kids have mastered this, and men have been falsely accused of this as well. But the selective listening means you're just playing the tape. You tell yourself, listen, I already know what you're going to say, so we just turn the tape reel on and don't pay any attention to what's happening. Then we have attentive listening, a very powerful method of listening. And this is a good way of listening simply because when you are getting the information, and it's easier when you're entertained or you like what's being said and you're focused. Because when you're listening attentively, it's processed through your background, your education, your knowledge, your experiences, so you're able to filter in the information and make sense of the information. So a very powerful way, and generally something like a training class like this. Then you have that final way, it's called active listening. Very powerful, very difficult. That is, you're putting yourself in the other person's shoes. That requires an awful lot of concentration, an awful lot of energy, but it is very, very powerful. One real quick question. At the beginning of the class, I said, I'm going to ask you to commit to how many things? 2, maybe 3. Without looking at your notes, what was the first thing I asked you to commit to? What was it? We ain't even out of here. You ain't been an hour. I already forgot. You look at your notes. What is the first thing I should commit to? Cultivate a more proactive mindset. Yeah, it was. They're telling me what I designed my program to be. Cultivate a more proactive mindset. Now, this is number 2. I want you to use these steps when you're listening to someone before the week is over. Everybody with me? Number one, give the speaker your full attention. The full attention. That is, if you need to, turn that monitor off, turn that tape or radio you're listening to, and close that door if you need to, but give them your full attention. Number two, don't interrupt. Because you can tell some people, boy, their mouth moving even while you're talking. They can't wait for you to shut up so they can get their stuff out. Don't interrupt. Number three, ask about anything you don't understand. Now, this is one situation where you might be able to interrupt because you don't want them spending 20 minutes telling you something and you don't have a clue what they're talking about. So this is one situation where you may interrupt. Three, take brief mental notes to keep track of details. Take brief mental notes to keep track of details. And if it's in a professional setting, you can say, is it okay if I take physical notes? And it's being courteous just to ask. And then finally, eliminate all obstacles to listening. Eliminate all obstacles to listening. So this is the second thing that I want you to consider doing before the week is out when you're in a situation where you have to listen. Okay? Now, three things I want to talk about real quick before we call it a day. Number one, watch what you are eating. Watch your diet. Because we all know our diet affects our health. Can we agree? And man, this is the one thing we get, and we don't realize how valuable it is till we start to lose it. And what we consume on a daily basis makes a difference. We got to watch the salts, the fats, and the excess of anything. And I'm not talking about being perfect, because I'm a little Debbie fanatic. But we got to watch all of those sugars and all those other things and of excess because it makes a difference. Number two, exercise regularly. By a show of hands, how many would say you exercise regularly? Excellent. It's virtually the fountain of youth. In fact, new research suggests that exercising on a regular basis, especially resistance training, increases your memory. And for me, it's an absolute must. I mean, I used to be a competitive bodybuilder. I know you can tell. A long time ago. And they're talking about what? Maybe 2 or 3 days a week, 20 or 30 minutes of brisk walking, you're good. That's a minimal investment for what you gain for exercising on a regular basis. And then finally, learn to focus on those things that you can control. See, too many of us focus on things that we can't. We need to learn to accept those things that we cannot control and divert that energy toward those things that we can. We can control what we put in our mouth and in our systems. We can control how active we are. And I'd like to leave you with this. Remember, true success in life is not based so much on the external conditions as it is in the deep-seated belief in your own worth. Thank you for having me today. Thank you. Thank you.